Hello, this is part two of week seven's YouTube lecture, and I just want to start this off by finishing up our discussion on leadership targeting, high value targeting. Um, I kind of concluded by the last lecture by talking that it does work, it brings certain benefits to an organization or to a counter-terrorist organization, but it only works under certain conditions, and it doesn't work under certain other conditions. Just want to talk about that now, and why do some work? Why doesn't work? Well, let's say you're again. I'm going to pick on Roslyn again. Talk about the Haqqani network, but the ISAF commander comes up to you and says, "Design a high value targeting program. What does it need to be effective?" And I would, if I was that person, if I was in Rosalind's shoes and I was asked that, I would say, "Sir, I would recommend there's 5 things that you need to do to make sure it's effective. 1, high value targeting program must have continuous attacks. You can't just kill one person and then rest on your laurels and just say that's it. We're done. You have to kill or capture, and then as soon as someone else takes the rank, kill someone else again, kill or capture them, so forth and so forth and so forth." The best example here is or Israel against Hamas. Israel would kill a Hamas leader every 3 or 4 months. They would continuously do it just to push the cycle along. So that's the first element. Number 2, a leadership targeting program can't just focus on the top leaders, but focuses on the mid-level commanders as well. Mid-level commanders are kind of where the work is done in an insurgency, and the best example of this is what we did in Iraq in 2007, 2008. We focused on, we killed Zarqawi, but that didn't achieve much effects. But a year later, we killed the mid-level, the bomb makers, the company commander type people in the insurgency, and that had the effect. So that would be the second recommendation. The third, any high-value targeting program has to be coordinated with other counter-terrorism methods. You can't just have high-value targeting and just say, that's it. That's our only show in this sport here. You have to coordinate with others. The lecture you saw talked about high-value targeting being coordinated with the wall. In the West Bank, for instance, the Israelis used their leadership targeting, but they also had a wall dividing the West Bank from Israel proper, and that stopped a lot of the terrorist flow into Israel. Other methods, the Pakistanis. One of the reasons why the Predator drone campaign is very successful is because the Pakistanis have put a counterinsurgency, or at least in 2008, 2009, they did this. On the other side of the border. So that forced the Al-Qaeda militants to be operated in a smaller box, which allowed the Predator strike to be the kind of the hammer. So the Pakistanis acted like the anvil, the Predators came in and acted like the anvil, and that actually achieved a better leadership targeting program. Third thing I would say is, or one more other counterterrorism method that needs to be used, that has been used in the past, is an amnesty program. If you is the carrot and stick method. If you give a terrorist if you give him a death sentence, he's going to die. You also have to give him a way out. You have to say, okay, you can either die at the hands of a Predator drone, or you can surrender yourself, surrender your buddies, and live at least a decent life. Amnesty programs are successful. We did one in Iraq in 2007, 2008. A lot of the communist insurgencies in the 80s and 90s, to defeat them, there was an amnesty program. Elizabeth is doing AQIM, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, but her predecessor organization, the GIA, was defeated by the Armed Islamic Group in Algeria, was defeated primarily, or not primarily, but a large portion of it was defeated through an amnesty program. So that's another counterterrorism method that needs to be used in conjunction with leadership targeting. So, fourth element, precise munitions. This was discussed in the lecture, the Israel example. They went from F-16s dropping 500-pound bombs to the Hellfire missiles that they killed other people, but for the most part, they killed the target and maybe the people around the target. They didn't just indiscriminately kill. So that's one of the elements. And the fifth is you must have precise intelligence. This almost goes without saying, but you need to know who you're fighting. You need to know those tactical questions. Who are you fighting? Their location, their pattern of life, their bed down locations, all those other things, so you can actually conduct the actual targeting raid. Without those five things, a leadership targeting program would probably be pretty unsuccessful. So those are the things I would say to the ISAF commander or any person that says, hey, you need to design a leadership targeting program to focus against whatever adversary you're facing. So that kind of wraps up high-value targeting. I know it's a little bit separate, but I think the lecture last week alluded to it, and I think it's something that you should know about it just as professionals in the national security business, but you should also write about it in your paper. And again, even if it's, whether it's President of the United States or even, Israel, Algeria, etc., no one wants to put boots on the ground. No one wants to put 100,000 troops into Yemen to take down Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So the question is, what can we do? And, President Obama is probably asking his national security advisors, is a leadership targeting program going to be successful in Yemen? And the answers are up to you to figure that out and bring that up in your papers. So I think I hit that covered that pretty much in depth. I just want to preview next week. You're going to see two documentaries that are actually really good. There's a little bit of a bias in them, but you should be able to detect the bias. But they're pretty factual. And the first is The Man Who Knew. It's kind of a story about John O'Neill, who's a senior Al-Qaeda analyst for the FBI prior to September 11th. And one of the great ironies is he died on September 11th as head of security for the World Trade Center. And then the second one is Spying on the Home Front, which I think is a little how should I say, it's propaganda, a little bit too much looking for the story and not enough. I'll talk about that more in a second. But I want to talk about September 11th failures because this leads into the PBS Frontline about The Man Who Knew. And there's been a lot written. There's 9/11 report, which I think everyone should read. It's excellent. But you have to ask, what are the intelligence failures and how did this happen? And amongst everything, I would say that there's two intelligence failures when talking about September 11th. The first is the FBI and our national security services did not understand that there could be an airplane used to target a civilian or to strike a civilian target. And the reason why I say that is an intelligence failure is that the FBI and our TSA, or TSA wasn't around at that time, but our FAA and other national security apparatus should have known that. That I think is unacceptable that they didn't. Planes were, and you'll see this in the movie, contemplated in the Bojinka plot in 1994 to crash into Central CIA headquarters and other landmarks. In 1994, the Algerians, the armed Islamic group, hijacked a plane and attempted to, or had a desire to crash it into the Eiffel Tower. Luckily, that was stopped by counterterrorism forces and French counterterrorism forces. But it wasn't. It shouldn't have been a surprise. You hear, well, no one could have thought that planes would have been used in this manner. That's kind of bullshit. It had happened before, and there was enough warning to say there should have been better defenses. So that's the first intelligence failure. And then the second one is what he calls improper watch listing procedures. And the biggest intelligence failure is that the CIA was well aware that two operatives were out there and they were associated with Al Qaeda, yet these people were not watch listed. So they could get a visa to come into the United States. They can board planes without any issue. They could travel freely in the United States. A couple of them got traffic tickets. This didn't raise any suspicions. So I think those are the two failures, inability to understand that planes could be used and improper watch listing procedures so that you can find out who's in your country or who's in the United States. And about the second point about watch listing, I do think that's very hard to do, to actually make sure the databases all talk to them and that this person with this information disseminates it to this person, and that there's a trusted traveler program at the airlines to know who's bad, who's good. Those are very hard things to do. So it's not like, and we could talk about it easy in a classroom. They're very hard to execute on the ground, but it's something that should have been done. So those are the overall 9/11 failures, and what the FBI specifically, why they failed, and I kind of have two reasons for this, and you'll see this in the movie, the FBI was focused more on as an investigatory agency, not a preemptive agency. And what I mean by this is that they look to try and gather the evidence after a crime had occurred so they can try and convict said person in a court of law. They were not interested in trying to prevent the terrorist act to occur in the first place. And I think that's the major failure of the FBI, or at least the culture of the FBI. And the second thing on a more practical level is that it's well known, and you'll see it in the documentaries, the FBI didn't have the information technology. They had an aversion to computers, their leadership had an aversion to computers. They didn't use email, they didn't use things that were available in 2000, 2001 that could have led to better information sharing among different entities within the FBI. And you'll talk about that memo that was written in Phoenix that talked about Arabs flying planes. Well, if you don't have email, you don't have a stored database, you don't have web servers and all those things that we take for granted now, that email doesn't get read by a lot of people. So if you don't have an emphasis on information technology, then you're not going to be successful in defeating terrorism. Then the final piece is Spying on the Home Front. It's a good documentary to watch, but just keep in mind everything's a little sensationalized. They make you think that the FBI can hear you when you call grandma on your phone. They can sift through all those conversations. It's not that easy. In fact, after working on this, and some of you do work in the field, you know that there is very detailed rules to prevent exactly that, spying on Americans willy-nilly. People are masked. NSA has limited authority to cover people in the United States, to tap cell phones, and when they do, it's not like, Rohin Sharma talked to, his mom, and this is registered in some database somewhere. No, my name is masked. There's no way that random NSA agent can just, spy on their ex-girlfriend by just clicking a couple of things on their computer. It doesn't. Everyone who's been in the business knows that that's not true. But this documentary kind of a little bit gives that impression, and that's why it's good to look at that with a careful eye. So I'll talk more about that next week. But for now, I hope you have a good week. Have a good Columbus Day, and I'll talk to you next week.